The Kuril Islands are Kurile Islands, a Chishima rettō in Russia's Sakhalin Oblast region, form a volcanic archipelago that stretches approximately 1,300 kilometers northeast from Hokkaido, Japan, to Kamchatka, Russia, separating the Sea of Okhotsk from the North Pacific Ocean. There are 56 islands and many minor rocks. It consists of Greater Kuril Ridge and Lesser Kuril Ridge. The total land area is 10,503.2 square kilometers and the total population is 19,434. All the islands are currently under Russian jurisdiction. Japan claims the two southernmost large islands as part of its territory, as well as Shikotan and the Habomai Islets, which has led to the ongoing Kuril Islands dispute. The disputed islands are known in Japan as the country's northern territories. Etymology. The name Kuril originates from the ordonym of the Aboriginal Ainu, the island's original inhabitants, Kur, meaning man. It may also be related to names for other islands that have traditionally been inhabited by the Ainu people, such as Kuye for Sakhalin and Kai for Hokkaido. In Japanese, the Kuril Islands are known as the Chishima Islands, also known as the Kurile Islands. Once the Russians reached the islands in the 18th century, they found a pseudo-etymology from Russian Kura due to the continual fumes and steam above the islands from volcanoes. Geography. The Kuril Islands form part of the ring of tectonic instability encircling the Pacific Ocean, referred to as the Ring of Fire. The islands themselves are summits of stratovolcanoes that are a direct result of the subduction of the Pacific Plate under the Okhotsk Plate, which forms a Kuril Trench some 200 kilometers east of the islands. The chain has around 100 volcanoes, some 40 of which are active, and many hot springs and fumaroles. There is frequent seismic activity, including a magnitude 8.5 earthquake in 1963 and one of magnitude 8.3 recorded on November 15, 2006, which resulted in tsunami waves up to 1.5 meters reaching the California coast. The climate on the islands is generally severe, with long, cold, stormy winters and short and notoriously foggy summers. The average annual precipitation is 30 to 40 inches, most of which falls as snow. The chain ranges from temperate to subarctic climate types, and the vegetative cover consequently ranges from tundra in the north to dense spruce and large forests on the larger southern islands. The highest elevations on the islands are Allied Volcano and Atlasov Island at the northern end of the chain and Taichu Volcano on Kunashir Island at the southern end. Landscape types and habitats on the islands include many kinds of beach and rocky shores, cliffs, wide rivers and fast gravelly streams, forests, grasslands, alpine tundra, crater lakes and peat bogs. The soils are generally productive, owing to the periodic influxes of volcanic ash and, in certain places, owing to significant enrichment by seabird guano. However, many of the steep, unconsolidated slopes are susceptible to landslides, and newer volcanic activity can entirely denude a landscape. Only the southernmost island has large areas covered by trees, while more northerly islands have no trees or spotty tree cover. Ecology. Marine. Owing to the location along the Pacific Shelf edge and the confluence of Okhotsk Seja and the southward Oyashio Current, the Kuril Islands are surrounded by waters that are among the most productive in the North Pacific, supporting a wide range and high abundance of marine life. Invertebrates. Extensive kelp beds surrounding almost every island provide crucial habitat for sea urchins. Various mollusks and countless other invertebrates and their associated predators. Many species of squid provide a principal component of the diet of many of the smaller marine mammals and birds along the chain. Fish. Further offshore, walleye, pollock, Pacific cod. Several species of flatfish are of the greatest commercial importance. During the 1980s, migratory Japanese sardine was one of the most abundant fish in the summer, and the main pinnipeds were a significant object of harvest for the indigenous populations of the Kurile Islands, both for food and materials such as skin and bone. The long-term fluctuations in the range and distribution of human settlements along the Kurile Island presumably tracked the pinnip ranges. In historical times, fur seals were heavily exploited for the fur in the 19th and early 20th centuries, and several of the largest reproductive rookeries, as on Rettō Island, were extirpated. In contrast, commercial harvest of the true seals and stellar sea lions has been relatively insignificant on the Kurile Islands proper. Since the 1960s there has been essentially no additional harvest, and the pinnip populations in the Kurile Islands appear to be fairly healthy and, in some cases, expanding. The notable exception is the now extinct Japanese sea lion, which was known to occasionally haul out on the Kurile Islands. Sea otters were exploited very heavily for their pelts in the 19th century. Indeed, as shown by 19th and 20th century whaling catch and sighting records, seabirds. The Kurile Islands are home to many millions of seabirds, including northern fulmars, tufted puffins, murre, kittiwakes, guillemots, auklets, petrels, gulls and cormorants. On many of the smaller islands in summer, where terrestrial predators are absent, virtually every possibly hummock, cliff, niche or underneath of boulder is occupied by a nesting bird. Terrestrial. The composition of terrestrial species on the Kurile Islands is dominated by Asian mainland taxa via migration from Hokkaido and Sakhalin Islands, and by Kamchatka taxa from the north. While highly diverse, there is a relatively low level of endemism. The WWF divides the Kurile Islands into two ecoregions. The southern Kuriles, along with southwestern Sakhalin, comprise the South Sakhalin-Kurile mixed forests ecoregion. The northern islands are part of the Kamchatka-Kurile meadows sparse forests, a larger ecoregion that extends onto the Kamchatka Peninsula and Commander Islands. Because of the generally smaller size and isolation of the central islands, few major terrestrial mammals have colonized these, though red and Arctic foxes were introduced for the sake of the fur trade in the 1880s. The bulk of the terrestrial mammal biomass is taken up by rodents, many introduced in historical times. The largest southernmost and northernmost islands are inhabited by brown bear, foxes, and martens. Some species of deer are found on the more southerly islands. It is claimed that a wildcat, the Kurilian bobtail, originates from the Kurile Islands. The bobtail is due to the mutation of a dominant one. The cat has been domesticated and exported to nearby Russia and bred there, becoming a popular domestic cat. Among terrestrial birds, ravens, peregrine falcons, some wrens and wagtails are common. History. The Ainu people were early inhabitants of Kurile Islands, although there are few records that predate the 17th century. The Japanese administration first took nominal control of the islands in the Edo period of Japan, in the form of claims by the Matsuma clan. It is claimed that the Japanese knew of the northern islands 370 years ago. On Shoho on Kukoi-Zu, a map of Japan made by the Tokugawa shogunate in 1644. There are 39 large and small islands shown northeast of the Shitoko Peninsula and Cape Nosapu. In 1811, Russian Captain Vasily Golovnin and his crew, who stopped at Kunishia during the hydrographic survey, were captured by retainers of the Nambu clan and sent to the Matsuma authorities authorities, because a Japanese trader, Takada Yukahei, was also captured by Petr Rikid, captain of a Russian vessel near Kunishir in 1812. Japan and Russia entered into negotiations to establish the border between the two countries. American whale ships caught right whales off the islands between 1847 and 1892. 3 of the ships were wrecked on the islands, 2 on Europe in 1855 and 1 on Makanrushi in 1856. In September 1892, the bark Cape Horn Pigeon, of New Bedford, was seized by a Russian schooner north of Kunishir Island and escorted to Vladivostok, where it was detained for nearly 2 weeks. The Treaty of Commerce, Navigation and Delimitation was concluded in 1855, and the border was established between It and Europe. This border confirmed that Japanese territory stretched south from It and Russian territory stretched north of Europe. Sakhalin remained a place where people from both countries could live. The Treaty of St. Petersburg in 1875 resulted in Japan relinquishing all rights over Sakhalin in exchange for Russia ceding all of the Kurile Islands south of Kamchatka. During the Russo-Japanese War of 1904–1905, Gunji, a retired Japanese military man and local settler in Shumshu, led an invading party to the Kamchatka coast. Russia sent reinforcements to the area to capture and intern this group. After the war was over, Japan received fishing rights in Russian waters as part of the Russo-Japanese Fisheries Agreement until 1945. During their armed intervention in Siberia 1918–1925, Japanese forces from the northern Kurils, along with United States and European forces, occupied southern Kamchatka. Japanese vessels made naval strikes against Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky. The Soviet Union seized southern Sakhalin and the Kurile Islands at the end of World War II. Japan maintains a claim to the 4 southernmost islands of Kunishir, It, Shikotan, and the Habomai Rocks, together called the Northern Islands Territories. Japanese administration in 1869. The Meiji government established the Colonization Commission in Sapporo to aid in the development of the northern area. Izedo was renamed Hokkaido and Kita-Izedo later received the name of Karafuto. 11 provinces and 86 districts were founded by Meiji government and were put under the control of feudal clans. Because the Meiji government could not sufficiently cope with Russians moving to South Sakhalin, Japan negotiated with Russia over control of the Kurile Islands, resulting in the Treaty of St. Petersburg that ceded the 18 islands north of Europe to Japan and all of Sakhalin to Russia. Road networks and post offices were established on Kunishiri and Etoro-fu. Life on the islands became more stable when a regular sea route connecting islands with Hokkaido was opened and a telegraphic system began. At the end of the Taisho period, towns and villages were organized in the northern territories and village offices were established on each island. The Habomai Island towns were all part of Habomai village, for example. In other cases, the town and village system was not adopted on islands north of Europe, which were under direct control of the Nemuro sub-prefectural office of the Hokkaido government. Each village had a district forestry system, a marine product examination center, salmon hatchery, post office, police station, elementary school, Shinto temple, and other public facilities. In 1930, 8,300 people lived on Kunishiri Island and 6,000 on Etoro-fu Island, and most of them were engaged in coastal and high-sea fishing. There were 17,209 91 Japanese islanders on the Kurils. World War II Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto ordered the meeting of the Imperial Japanese Navy Strike Force for the Hawaii Operation Attack on Pearl Harbor, November 22, 1941 in Tankinahito-Kapu Bay, in Iturup Island, South Kurils. The territory was chosen for its sparse population, lack of foreigners, and constant fog coverage. The Admiral ordered the move to Hawaii on the morning of November 26. On July 10, 1943, the first bombardment against the Shumushu and Paramushiro Japanese bases by American forces occurred. From Alexei Airfield, 8 B-25 Mitchells from the 77th Bombardment Squadron took off, led by Captain James L. Huddleston. This mission principally struck Paramushiro. Another mission was flown during September 11, 1943, when 11th Air Force dispatched 8 B-24 Liberators and 12 B-25s. But now the Japanese were alert and reinforced the defenses. 74 crew members in 3 B-24s and 7 B-25 failed to return. 22 men were killed in action, 1 taken prisoner and 51 interned in Kamchatka, Russia. The 11th Air Force implemented other bombing missions against the northern Kurils, including a strike by 6 B-24s from the 404th Bombardment Squadron and 16 P-38s from the 54th Fighter Squadron on February 5, 1944. Japanese sources report that the Matsuwa military installations were subject to American airstrikes between 1943–44. The Americans' Operation Wedlock diverted Japanese attention north and misled them about U.S. strategy in the Pacific. The plan included airstrikes by USA, AF and U.S. Navy bombers and U.S. Navy shore bombardment and submarine operations. Japanese increased the garrison in the North Kurils from 8,000 in 1943 to 41,000 in 1944 and maintained more than 400 aircraft in the Kurils and Hokkaido area in anticipation that the Americans might invade from Alaska. American planners had briefly contemplated an invasion of northern Japan from the Aleutian Islands during the fall of 1943 but rejected that idea as too risky and impractical. They considered the use of Boeing B-29 Superfortresses on Kamchatka and Shemu bases but rejected that idea too. The U.S. military maintained interest in these plans when they ordered the expansion of bases in the western Aleutians, and major construction began on Shemu. In 1945, plans were shelved for a possible invasion of Japan via the northern route. Between August 18 and 31, Soviet forces invaded the North and South Kurils. The entire Japanese civilian population of roughly 17,000 was expelled by 1946. Between August 24 and September 4, 1945, the 11th Air Force of the United States Army Air Forces sent 2 B-24s on reconnaissance missions over the North Kuril Islands with intention to take photos of the Soviet occupation in the area. Soviet fighters intercepted and forced them away, a foretaste of the Cold War that lay ahead. Russian administration Severokurilsky District, Kurilsky District, Yuzhno-Kurilsky District. Current situation. As of 2013, 19,434 people inhabited the Kuril Islands. These include ethnic Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Tatars, Niks, Oroch, and Ionis. Russian Orthodoxy and Islam are the only religions with significant following among the population. Some of the villages are permanently manned by Russian soldiers. Others are manned by civilians, which are employees of the border guard service of the Russian police. These employees are not considered soldiers, so they are counted in the census data. As of 2014, there were only 8 inhabited islands out of a total of 56. Iturup Island is over 60% ethnically Ukrainian. Economy: fishing is the primary occupation. The islands have strategic and economic value in terms of fisheries and also mineral deposits of pyrite, sulfur and various polymetallic ores. There are hopes that oil exploration will provide an economic boost to the islands. The economic rise of the Russian Federation has been seen on the Kurils too. The most visible sign of improvement is the new construction and infrastructure. In 2014, construction workers built a pier and a breakwater in Kitavi Bay, central Iturup, where barges are a major means of transport, sailing between the cove and ships anchored offshore. A new road has been carved through the woods near Kurisk, the island's biggest village, going to the site of Yuzhno-Kurisk Mendeleyevo Airport. Gidrostroy, the Kurils' biggest business group with interests in fishing, construction and real estate, built its second fish processing factory on Iturup Island in 2006, introducing a state-of-the-art conveyor system. To deal with the rise in the demand of electricity, the local government is also upgrading a state-run geothermal power plant at Mount Buransky, an active volcano where steam and hot water can be found. Military: the main Russian force stationed on the islands is the 18th Machine Gun Artillery Division, which has its headquarters in Goryachi Ukliuchi on Iturup Island. There are also border guard service troops stationed on the islands. In February 2011, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev called for substantial reinforcements of the Kuril Islands defenses. In 2015, anti-aircraft missile systems, Toruk missile systems, coastal defense missile systems Bastion, combat helicopters K-52 Alligator and 1 Varshavia Anchor project submarine came on defense of Kuril Islands. Atlasov Island. The northernmost Atlasov Island is an almost perfect volcanic cone rising sheer out of the sea. It has been praised by the Japanese in haiku, woodblock prints, and other forms, in much the same way as the better-known Mount Fuji. List of main islands. While in Russian sources the islands are mentioned for the first time in 1646, the earliest detailed information about them was provided by the explorer Vladimir Atlasov in 1697. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, the Kuril Islands were explored by Danila and Sifrov I, Kozyrevsky, Ivan Yevranov, Fyodor Luzin, Martin Schippanberg, Adam Johann von Kurz and Stern, Vasily Golovnin, and Henry James Snow. The following table lists information on the main islands from north to south.